So guys, you know how I'm always banging on about getting your micronutrients into you to strengthen your immune system and to replenish that incredible microbiome of yours? Sometimes we just have to take a step back and maybe provide some food for the soul for our gardens. So the other day, I got a flyer and it was from the amazing Wendy, who I've just met. And I asked her to stop by and compost and provide like a roast dinner for my garden. So take a look.
Everybody knows how good like worm castings or worm poo or whatever you'd like to call it is for the soil, and so what I make and feed for the worms is this incredible live cultured mix that puts all of the bacteria and microorganisms into your garden, as well as worms and worm eggs. They're absolutely amazing little transformation tubes. They take everything from the beginning at the end of the life cycle and turn it into everything that's needed to start the new cycle of life. Everything that they eat inside their gut, by the time it comes out their little patooties, it's got 10 to 20 times more bioactivity than what went in their mouth. So really what we're able to do with the worm castings is cultivate this really extraordinary bolster dose of bioactivity back into the soil to stimulate the soil cycle, which gets your humus development going. You know, over a period of like 2 or 3 weeks, you'll notice a vibrancy come back into the garden. So in this time now, you'll have all that nutrient going into your garden. So when your spring flush comes, everything's in the soil, ready to go gangbusters. One is a little bit the same way as these compost into the soil, is try and aim for a roast dinner. So if you have a compost bin, the best one is the ones that have direct contact with the ground, so that if it gets too hot or too toxic, then your worms can escape and come back later when it cools down. But it's in the process of composting is to be able to have some aeration, is to put some carbon in, like wood shavings, just to be able to, as you add your vegetable scraps and waste, that you're doing it in layers, because the biggest failure is not adding the carbon to the mix. The worms will come from deep underground, like the earthworms, but if you want to, because compost worms are surface breeders, you really have to add them. It's important to give it a good water if it's not going to rain, just to be able to dissolve those worm castings underneath the compost layer, and then the compost layer forms a blanket over the top, so it just creates the perfect environment for all of the microbes and worms and, you know, all that soil life to be able to have, you know, lots of parties and, you know, make love and make babies. Things are composted properly, it shouldn't smell. Partly of these, you know, pelletized chicken manure fertilizers that people can get is that they don't go through that process. They're just pelletized, and most of the nitrogen, while it's high, volatilizes off into the atmosphere. So one of the things is it's not so much about having high levels of nutrient, which is a problem, you know, washing into waterways and causing algae blooms and things like that, is to have a really even, like I said, roast dinner mix that actually over the long term cultivates and releases nutrients slowly over time. Well, the thing that I'm mostly interested in is peace and sustainability messaging, and, you know, being able to model economics as well that's based on, you know, for good stuff. So the beauty about the worms and composting is that there's no lose in it for the environment. Everybody wins out of it. It's an education about the earth, and everybody that I come into contact with, there's an opportunity to do that education. But also all the funds from the farm activity go into peace and sustainability messaging projects. So for me, it's really a congruent way to be able to make the money and use that money to make a difference for the projects that are really important to me.